You know that feeling when you're so settled into your life that you stop questioning whether it could fall apart? That was me. I'd been with the company long enough to know the rhythms, the Monday meetings that always ran over, the midweek slump where the coffee machine got more visits than the printer, the quiet Fridays where everyone's energy dipped just enough to make time move slower. But honestly, I liked it. I liked knowing exactly when my boss would drop by with just a quick update that turned into a 20-minute conversation about his dog. I liked the way my desk felt like my space, not just a spot in a row of cubicles, but a little island of my own. I still remember that morning sunlight. It would filter through the blinds, hitting my desk at just the right angle so the steam from my coffee looked like something out of a stock photo. The kind of small, ordinary beauty you never think to appreciate until later, when you're looking back and wondering how something so peaceful could be the same place where your life unraveled. 2 weeks before it happened, I got my performance review. Exceeds expectations. Not just in one area, but across the board. I left that meeting with a stupid grin on my face. The kind you try to hide, because you don't want to look smug in front of your coworkers. That review meant something to me, not because I needed a pat on the back, but because it felt like proof. Proof that all the late nights, the careful double-checking, the times I volunteered for projects no one else wanted, it all mattered. I walked out of the office that day feeling untouchable. It's funny, though. Security feels solid until you realize it's just a feeling. You can hold it in your hands. Turn it over. Convince yourself it's made of steel. Sometimes it's glass, and all it takes is one crack to shatter it completely at the time. Though I didn't know any of that. I was just content and maybe a little proud. I'd arrive early, unlock my computer, sip my coffee while the inbox loaded, not because I had to be there early, but because I liked the quiet before the noise. That quiet was my favorite part of the day. If I close my eyes now, I can still see it, that soft light over the desk, my neatly stacked papers, the tiny plant I kept beside my monitor. It was a little ecosystem of calm. Safe place. Or so I thought. It was a Tuesday, not the kind of day you expect life to blindside you, not that there's ever a right day for that. The morning had been quiet. It's just the soft tapping of keyboards and the occasional cough from the guy 3 desks down. My coffee was still warm. The inbox was almost clear. Everything was ordinary, and then the notification popped up from COO subject, termination notice, no lead-in, no please see me in my office. Just that. 2 words that didn't even make sense in my head yet. At first I thought it was some kind of phishing scam dot, the kind you forward to it with a half-annoyed, half-amused note. But when I clicked it open, the company logo was there. The signature was real. The timestamp matched, and the body of the email. God, it was 3 sentences long. Effective immediately, your employment with company name has been terminated. You will receive further instructions regarding final pay. And benefits, no reason, no explanation, no human acknowledgement of the fact that I was a human. I read it once, twice. By the 3rd time, the words were blurring. It was like my brain refused to let them in, like they were in a foreign language I couldn't translate. My heartbeat was loud enough that it drowned out the office noise. It's strange the world around me didn't change. People were still typing. Phones were still ringing. Someone even laughed from across the room. But inside my head, it was like a bomb had gone off. I remember my hand just hovering over the mouse, not even scrolling, like maybe if I didn't move, it would all go away, it felt. Surreal, like I'd slipped into one of those dreams where you're at work but everything's just a little off, until something possible happens and you wake up. Except I didn't wake up. I kept staring at that screen, my reflection faintly visible in the monitor's glow. My own face looked like a stranger's, and in that moment, all the stability, all the quiet confidence from 2 weeks ago just evaporated. It's amazing how fast security can turn into freefall. I didn't leave my desk right away. Part of me thought that if I just kept working, maybe this was a mistake they'd fix in the next 5 minutes. But the minutes kept passing, and my inbox stayed empty. No follow-up. No clarification. Nothing. So I started digging. I opened my Sent folder first. Scrolled through the last few weeks of emails like I was reading a diary I barely remembered writing. Every subject line felt loaded, every word suddenly suspicious. Was I too blunt in that project update to the coup? Did I miss something in the client pitch deck? Did I step on the wrong person's toes in a meeting without realizing it? Questions came like a flood. And the more I tried to answer them, the more I realized I was chasing shadows. Next, I pulled up my performance review from 2 weeks ago. For pages of praise, words like valuable asset, and consistently exceeds expectations. Highlighted in bold. I stared at those lines until the screen started to burn my eyes. If there was some hidden message in there, I couldn't see it. It was still just good. Glowing even. I printed it out, along with a few other recent emails, as if holding. The paper might make the truth show itself in the margins. The stack of pages on my desk grew. Meeting notes, client feedback, project timelines. My desk went from tidy to chaos in under an hour. Somewhere in the mess, my phone buzzed. Once, twice. I didn't check it. Whoever it was, friend, coworker, family, I didn't know how to explain what had just happened without sounding like I was making it up. I kept going. My mind wouldn't stop replaying the last month like it was some kind of crime scene footage. The COO's quick nod in the hallway. That one meeting where the VP didn't look me in the eye the time I log in. Froze for no reason, and it told me it was just a glitch. At the time, these things meant nothing. Now, it felt like pieces of a puzzle that didn't want to fit together. The strangest part? Underneath the panic, there was this tiny, stubborn thought. There has to be a reason, because if there wasn't, then what happened to me could happen to anyone, and that was somehow more terrifying. It's strange how memory works most days. It runs in the background, a quiet catalog of moments you don't think you'll ever need to remember, until something happens. And suddenly, those moments step into the spotlight, demanding your attention. That's what happened to me. Sitting there with papers scattered all over my desk, my mind started replaying scenes I hadn't thought about in months. The first one was from a Monday morning meeting. I'd walked in late, not late. Just a minute after the start time, and as I slid into my chair, I caught the tail. End of a hushed conversation between two managers. I didn't hear enough to make sense of it. It's just something about making changes soon. At the time, I assumed it was about a client project. Now, I wasn't so sure. Then, there was the glance. One of those blink and do miss it moments. I was in the middle of presenting a progress update, and I noticed the COO and HR director exchange. This quick, loaded look. It was subtle, barely a shift in expression, but in hindsight, it felt like they were already holding a secret between them. And then the project reassignment. I'd been leading a major account for months. One of the biggest we had. Out of nowhere, my boss called me into his office and said they were shifting responsibilities to balance the workload. It didn't. Sit right. My workload was fine, and I'd never missed a deadline on that project. But I handed it over, told myself not to overthink it. Now, all those little moments I'd brushed aside were glowing like warning signs I'd ignored. The pieces weren't fitting together yet, but I could feel the outline of something ugly forming it. It was the kind of realization that doesn't hit you all at once. It creeps in, slow and heavy until you can't ignore it anymore. I leaned back in my chair, eyes unfocused. Seeing more of the past than the present, the office around me faded, replaced by a mental montage. Half-closed doors, quick whispers, as that slid away when I looked back. The truth hadn't revealed itself yet, but I could feel it breathing. Down my neck, I told myself not to panic until I'd spoken to someone in charge. Someone who could explain why an email like that was sent with no warning. So I started with the COO. Typed out a direct message. I just received a termination notice. Can we talk? No. I hit send and waited. A few minutes later, the reply came. Auto response. I'm currently out of the office and will respond to urgent matters as soon as possible. No acknowledgement. No, I'll have HR reach out. Just a wall of automated nothing. So I tried HR, called the direct line. Straight to voicemail. I left a message. my voice a strange mix of polite and panicked. I didn't want to sound desperate, but I was, and I couldn't shake the feeling that every second without an answer was another brick in some invisible wall going up around me. An hour later, I got an email from the HR assistant, not the director, saying we're looking into it. I'll get back to you soon. They didn't. I sent follow-up messages, no reply, called again, straight to voicemail. It's a special kind of helplessness, that quiet when no one tells you anything. Your brain fills the space with its own stories, each one darker than the last. I found myself staring at my phone, watching the screen light up with random notifications, news alerts, spam calls. A text from a friend I didn't answer, but never the one I was waiting for. The office felt louder in my head and quieter in reality. The kind of quiet that makes the ticking of the clock sound like a hammer, the kind that presses on your chest, until it's hard to breathe. By the end of the day, I had no answers, just unanswered calls, unread messages, and a creeping certainty that the silence wasn't an accident. A week passed, 7 days of silence, 7 days of checking my phone like it was a life support machine. 7 days of wondering how long it would take before the lack of closure drove me insane. And then it happened. I wasn't even supposed to have access to the company's shared drive anymore. My credentials should have been disabled the second that termination email hit my inbox. But for some reason, maybe someone forgot, maybe some IT process glitched, my login still worked at first. I just wanted to see if I could grab a few old project files for my portfolio. But while scrolling, I noticed a folder I'd never seen before. It wasn't hidden, exactly, just buried in a way you'd have to be curious or stupid to find. Inside, email threads, meeting notes, something labeled personnel review, confidential. I clicked, and there it was. Lines about me, not my work. Not my performance, me. A casual mention that I was too close to certain clients. A note suggesting that I'd been too outspoken in strategy meetings, as if having opinions was some kind of crime. And then the kicker, recommendation. Remove from position before next contract cycle to avoid internal conflict. No mention of my perfect performance review. No acknowledgement of the revenue I'd brought in or the projects I'd saved from falling apart. Just politics. Personal grudges dressed up as corporate strategy. I scrolled through more threads. Little digital daggers. Passed back and forth between people who smiled in my face. One person called me a potential problem if left unchecked. Another said I tended to overshadow management in client meetings. I guess competence was only valued as long as it didn't make someone else look bad. I leaned back in my chair, the monitor glow painting my face in cold blue light. It felt like someone had pulled the floor out from under me, but this time, there was no free fall, just the hard, flat truth. They hadn't fired me because I failed. They'd fired me because I'd succeeded in the wrong way. In front of the wrong people. The betrayal was sharp, but it was also clarifying, like seeing the whole ugly picture at once. In realizing you'd been standing inside it the whole time, I sat there for a long time, staring at the last email in that thread like it was going to rewrite itself. It was piece by piece. The puzzle started clicking together. The perfect performance review, the one that had felt like a badge of honor, now looked different. Too perfect, like they were polishing my record before taking me out. So there'd be no obvious mess to explain later. The project reassignment. It's made sense now. The quick glances in meetings, the sudden distance from people who used to linger at my desk for small talk. None of it had been random. None of it had been about my work. It was someone else's game, a power shuffle, and I was just a piece they decided to move off the board. The anger didn't hit all at once. It built slow and steady, like water rising in a glass until it's one drop away from spilling over. It wasn't loud, just thumping anger. It was quiet, cold, the kind that settles in your bones and makes you see things with a sharper edge. I gathered the printed papers from my desk, the glowing review, the old emails, the proof that none of this made sense, and started feeding them into the shredder, one sheet at a time. The sound was steady, almost hypnotic, By the time I was done, my coffee had gone cold. It sat there beside me, untouched, a perfect little metaphor for the way this whole job had turned. Something once warm and comforting, now bitter and useless. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't even shocked. I was done pretending this was anything but what it was, eh? Calculated move to erase me, and in a strange way, knowing that made me feel more in control than I had in weeks. Once the truth was out in the open, or at least out in my open, the first instinct was obvious. Fight back. Expose them. Send every email, every meeting note, every piece of proof. To the right people? But here's the thing no one tells you about revenge. It takes energy. And by then, I was running on fumes. I knew how this company worked. I'd seen other people try to challenge the system. They didn't win. They didn't even get a fair fight. The game was rigged, and the house always came out clean. So instead of throwing myself into another battle I couldn't win, I let the dust settle. Not because I was okay with what happened, because I refused to give them more of me than they'd already taken. I started spending my days differently. No more frantic checking of my inbox. No. More mental rewinding of conversations. Trying to find the moment I lost control of the story. I gave myself permission to stop digging for a version of justice that didn't exist here one evening. I found myself standing by the window, watching the city as daylight faded into streetlight glow. My reflection was there in the glass. Tired, but calmer than I'd been in weeks. And for the first time since that Tuesday morning, I felt like the silence wasn't closing in on me anymore, it was opening up. The truth was simple. They'd made their move. I didn't have to respond on their terms. I could walk away without giving them the satisfaction of watching me break. I didn't expect to find something so soon. A friend of a friend mentioned a position at a smaller company, less pay, fewer perks, but a clean slate. I wasn't even sure I wanted to jump back into work yet. But the idea of being somewhere that didn't feel like a chessboard was too tempting to ignore. The interview was different from the start. No corporate theater, no buzzwords, just a conversation about what I'd done, what I wanted to do, and how we could help each other get there. They didn't care about titles. They cared about the work. When they offered me the job, I hesitated for half a second. Not because I doubted them, because I'd forgotten what it felt like to say yes without second-guessing myself. But I said it, and that one word felt like letting go of a weight I didn't realize I was still carrying. The first few weeks were quiet, no whispered power plays, no sudden reassignments without reason. People said what they meant and meant what they said. It was almost unsettling at first. It's like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, but it never did. Life started feeling lighter. I woke up without that. Not in my stomach. I stopped bracing for bad news every time my phone buzzed. And somewhere in the middle of all that, I realized I wasn't looking back as much anymore. The job wasn't glamorous. There was no shiny title, no corner office, but there was peace. And after everything I'd been through, it felt like the biggest promotion of my life. One morning, driving to work, I caught sight of the sun breaking over the horizon, a soft gold spilling across an empty stretch of road, and it hit me. I wasn't heading back to where I'd been. I was moving forward, 1 mile at a time. I used to think that losing this job would be the worst thing that could happen to me, that it would define me, follow me, leave a mark I couldn't wash off. And in the beginning it did feel that way. It felt like a free fall, without a parachute, except the ground never came, just the endless drop. But now, at some distance, I see it differently. It wasn't just a job it was an illusion that the people I worked for cared about more than the bottom line, that loyalty and hard work were some kind of shield. The truth is, the job didn't define me. My work ethic did. My integrity did. The way I handled myself when they tried to erase me, that's what will stick. I think about the people I used to admire there, how I once measured myself against their approval. Now, I see them for what they are, not villains in some grand story, just people protecting their own turf, even if it meant stepping on someone else to do it. And that's the real gift in all this. Gotta walk away with my dignity intact. I didn't beg, I didn't break. I didn't turn into the version of myself they might have hoped I'd become: angry, reckless, desperate. They took a title from me. I kept my name, and that's worth more than any promotion. I don't go near that building much anymore, but once in a while, I'll pass it. When I do, I glance up at the glass facade, reflection of the sky shimmering over the floors I used to walk, and then I keep moving. Not out of bitterness, out of freedom.